Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of DevRelish. For those of you who are joining for the first time, this is a show about DevRel and DevRel-ish positions. For those of us who've been in DevRel for a long time, we know that there are a lot of different roles that may not be titled DevRel, but they're DevRel-ish type roles. In the types of DevRel. And we're going to talk about flavors of DevRel in a little bit, but I want to kind of welcome our co-host, Erin.
Hi, all. Excited. And Kevin Whinnery here today for joining us.
Yes, very, very stoked. Have been doing this ish for a while now, and happy to chat about DevRel a little bit with you today.
Awesome. So, Kevin, we always kind of start to help people kind of set some context. We always ask for a little bit of like where you got your start, what your career as a developer was and how that led you into DevRel.
Yeah, sure. So I did a little bit of computer science way back in school, but kind of hated it. So I ended up with like a CS minor. I didn't actually graduate with a CS degree and instead ended up with a political science degree. But facing down a pile of student debt and, imminent bills, I kind of had two different career opportunities, one of which involved computers. And so I went the route to pay down student debt and did about 4 years right after college as like an enterprise Java developer, kind of working on a servlet application. And in that process, ended up getting involved in like some open source projects and starting to pick up JavaScript specifically. So I started contributing to an open source project, which now is actually kind of defunct, but there was a company around it at the time. And I was, contributing on the forums and just sort of an active member of the community. I actually successfully pitched an O'Reilly book on this technology, which never saw the light of day. But so I was just kind of a part of the community, and one of the founders reached out and was like, "Hey, would you like to be a developer evangelist for this technology?" And I was like, "What are those?" I realized that this was a role that, at that time wasn't actually terribly common, but I joined the company to do DevRel, and that was about in 2008, which was the first time I was in that role. And then in about 2012, I joined up with a company called Twilio, which was pretty small at the time, about a little less than 100 folks, I think, when I joined up, and then spent like 10 years there as Twilio kind of grew from kind of a small little API company to a slightly larger API company. And then after Twilio, I spent a little bit of time at a company called Retool that does like visual app builder tool. And very recently, very excited about this one, I got to join the Deno company, who's working on the sort of next generation JavaScript runtime from the original author of Node.js. So this has been a really fun tech to work on. And I'm about like 4 months into the gig at this point.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Deno myself, having used like Deno deploy.
Oh, great!
Some edge stuff on it, so definitely love to talk about that some more. But and just I wanted to follow up because it's interesting. I don't think we've had one person on here was actually a computer science student. How many people have we had that like we've interviewed had computer science?
Yeah, I think you have the most computer science education.
Oh, really? Wow. So I'm the most formally educated computer scientist.
You're the most formally educated. You're beating my one semester of data journalism in Python, where I learned matplotlib.
That sounds pretty cool. Data journalism in Python. Was it a good class?
It was great. And I learned a lot of matplotlib, and then I started working in a Python shop, and I learned no one uses that library anymore. I was like, cool. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's like when I learned, like, the first programming language I learned was Scheme. And I was like, what are you doing to me? Like, I'm never going to be able to use this anywhere else. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I had my first, I think in the last DevRel, we touched on it, but my first, am I old in tech? Because the first I learned Liquid was the first like code I wrote for pay. For Liquid
okay, like Liquid templates? Like the
Liquid templates. Okay. And they are deprecating the checkout part of it that I worked on. So it's the first deprecation I've been through of.
Well, that's like a badge of honor, though. Like to have worked on a technology that has risen and fallen and now is irrelevant, but I bet you'll still get an email in like 5 years from someone who like saw your name in a commit message and was like, I bet Erin knows the answer to this question.
Probably, or maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, so officially, welcome. You're the most seasoned developer experience.
Oh man, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
but,
I'm curious though, like if it's just because of the nature of DevRel being a little more like, it's a technical job obviously, but it's also a lot of non-technical. I tell people like who are coming in, it's like if you really like to sit down and code all day, this probably isn't a job for you, because that's not necessarily what you do. So maybe that's why, like, is it? Do you think it's more common to have folks who don't have computer science backgrounds that end up in the DevRel space?
I mean, kinda. So it also like it's maybe part of the discussion we'll have today too. There's because there's a lot of different disciplines sort of embedded within DevRel. I think it kind of it makes a big difference, like what sort of product you're working on, like what sort of like needs like a DevRel organization has. So like Google, a lot of their like DevRel teams like employ like DevRel engineers, and they do quite a lot with like client SDK libraries, and so they're sort of like almost like a customer facing engineering team versus somebody that like might be more focused on like community programs or content development, that sort of thing. So I've seen them kind of run the gamut, but I would tend to agree that like generalists do better like in this type of work because there's so much variation from one day to the next.
Well, and that brings me to a great segue to talk about the topic we're here to talk about today of the 6 flavors, because I was running through, and I'm currently in the interview process. I'm actually wrapping up with a few companies right now, so hopefully great. We'll see where it goes. Fingers crossed, or hire me to be a full-time comedian. Either one, I'm open to it. Just I will not do my work via Instagram DMs because I can't. Those are for dog pictures only. Anywho, that all being said, is I've heard of like the 3 flavors of DevRel. Like you have, like I always kind of subscribe to the Mary Thingballs triangle, like drawing this is when I would like, if we had a pro animator, it'd be like triangle. You'd have the relations on the top. You usually have evangelism and then community. And I think in my own personal career, I've watched myself go from a very community strengthened person to, I'd probably put myself smack dab in the middle at the last role because I know more about ML ops and infrastructure than I ever thought I would ever know in my life. And that kind of stuff, and as well as just understanding developers more, kind of leveling up those skills. So what's the 6 different flavors of DevRel? Yeah,
and I suspect like it's very similar to the Mary Thingballs list, but like the 6, if I like when I sort of break it down for folks that maybe don't know what a DevRel program does, or I like kind of need to educate folks on like what are the things that a DevRel program could be focusing on. The 6 buckets I put in are engineering, which sort of covers like actual software development. So the creation of like SDKs to, integrate whatever your product is with popular programming languages, or like integrations. So if there's maybe like a lot of developer products have some kind of like pluggability mechanism and supporting, that ecosystem by either building some of those integrations in userland, that sort of thing. But lots of DevRel programs can actually benefit from like a public facing or like a customer facing engineering discipline. So that's certainly one that's front and center for me. Advocacy is something that I put in its own bucket as well. So that being the active engaging with the community, understanding what the pain points are, and then like socializing that data back into the organization. So this is actually something where like if you're doing it really well, you have like a really good relationship with like product management, and you're kind of regularly helping them both like gather feedback. Like maybe you're working on this new alpha API and you find a group of interested developers, you get some feedback, and then you funnel that feedback like back into the product organization. So which I would broadly sort of term advocacy. And then evangelism, maybe the best understood one, which is, the field marketing, the content, the awareness activities where you just need to, get the name out for your product, whatever it is you're working with. Education, I would also put in the DevRel space. So like documentation, training, the example application, like basically any kind of enablement motions that your product might need. Community is definitely one of those pillars, like the MVP programs, engaging across channels, like making sure that there's that developers have ways to feel like they belong in your developer community, that being a part of the developer community is valuable to them. Like maybe there's job opportunities that are surfaced or certifications that maybe are relevant within your particular technology. And then the one that doesn't get talked about a lot actually is support. And I think like a lot of DevRel like practitioners tend to like maybe keep support at an arm's length because it is like a different discipline in a lot of ways. But depending on the product, like interfacing with support might be their most common way of engaging with the community around your product. At the company I was at previously, Retool, one of the most like critical like DevRel programs that the company had was like a really good like community facing support team that did a great job like being Johnny on the spot on the forums, answering questions, and being engaged that way. So depending on like the nature of the product, support actually ends up being a pretty critical like community vector as well. So those are kind of the 6 as I sort of described them.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I think, in my experience though, as some of those as the company gets bigger tend to split off like and be kind of mostly handled by a department that, like support, for instance. Like early stage, you're often like, I found DevRel's heavily involved in support, but then eventually they start kind of moving that off into an actual like support organization. And then then I think that the role changes in the sense that DevRel interfaces with support and maybe to find out like areas where we need to improve on docs or write some new blog posts to help folks to answer some questions. But like we're not actively doing support type activities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think like all 6 of those buckets, like at scale, are their own teams of probably unlimited size. Like if you're AWS, you probably have giant teams doing each of those things. For a lot of programs, like if you are the one person band kind of doing everything DevRel, which is a thing lots of folks find themselves doing, then you kind of have to pick your battles of like which of these buckets are the most important ones for your company or your product at the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll be honest, the last role that I worked in was the first role that I didn't have a login to the ticketing system, and I was probably like, yes, like this is the greatest day ever. Moral of the story is like I have been mostly like, and it's very interesting like hearing you explain it, because I'm like seeing in my own journey through DevRel and these careers of like how to flex. But I think we get the question a lot of in this podcast and in this chat, and I think of, do you have to have an engineering background to be in DevRel? To follow that up, like if I only got to focus on a few of these disciplines, what do you think would make yourself the most quote unquote hireable these days?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like the answer, of course, is it depends, which is the cop out, of course. Like if it's like helpful.
That's a standard DevRel-ish answer.
Yes, exactly. Like we exist in the gray area between. But I do think like there's, if you are working on a developer product, like the empathy that you get by, being a practicing developer is difficult to replace. Like it's not impossible to replace, and it's not like sort of, it's something that you couldn't work around. Like if you didn't come from a developer background, but it's really helpful, and it like also helps you like flex across each of those different functional areas in a pretty comfortable way, where if the thing that your program needs to succeed is developing integrations or creating an SDK for the new hot programming language that's out there, because like that community could really benefit from maybe like the API that you provide, having an engineering background like helps you do any of those 6 things just like a little bit better. So technical credibility is usually something that's helpful to cultivate. Now, that being said, like there's also specializations for which that is much less relevant. Like I think it's like even like for support, which you would think like would require like a pretty extensive technical background. Really what that is just like navigating the organization and like finding where like the answers exist for the questions that you have. Or advocacy is about like kind of understanding the market and like knowing which kinds of people are most likely to benefit from this type of technology. And those are not engineering skills really. So I think there's paths to success that don't involve being super technical, but having like that developer background, I think does give you the most flexibility. So, you know, always hacking on something, always learning, and kind of being actively cultivating your skill set there, I think is pretty useful.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And shout out to every sales engineer I've ever worked with, because I think as a DevRel, being right online with the sales engineering team, they always have the best answers. Like if you are stuck on something, 9 times out of 10, they have figured out a solution before product can. Love products, used to be one of those people. So much respect, not me throwing shade, but like your sales engineers just know. And like, I was at Strangely last week, and honestly, the sales engineer I was out at dinner with a couple of folks, and there's 2 sales engineers that were formerly DevRels that were like, this is the best transition ever. Like, if you ever get tired of people, they were like, and not having resources, go to sales engineering from DevRel. I was like, okay.
That is true. Sales engineers also get commission too. So
yeah, they were saying, one of them was saying it's like you get commission and you get, and he was like, yeah, but he was like, because I was like, no, I would never, I don't, I kind of like the advocacy side where I don't have, like, I'm self-taught. So again, very self-conscious about my technical skill set. But he was like, no, you're probably he's like, if you've built an SDK, you'll be fine. Like, I was like, all right, okay.
Yeah, go for it, Brian.
No, I was going to say, I've always been like, I've been surprised when I've heard of people making that transition from sales engineering to DevRel. They're like, I love DevRel, but the pay cut hurts. And I'm like, oh, hey, I didn't realize like you make that much more in sales engineering.
Yeah, it's true. Like it's, I mean, the more boring and terrible the technology, like the more you get paid out, like on the sales engineering side, it feels like. Like I knew somebody who did some SE work for Salesforce and was just raking in the dough, and I couldn't believe it. So if you're in it for the dollars, like that is not a bad way to go. Also, sales engineers are amazing, like because I don't know if you've seen the XKCD comic where like the developer is like calling into support and like they are talking to another developer and it's like the best experience they've ever had. And then they wake up from the dream because they never get to talk to a developer when they call support. The sales engineer is that person. Like they're the person who knows all the answers. And if you can like get a sales engineer, then they will probably solve all your problems for you. So developers probably don't usually want to talk to sales, but they do or should want to talk to sales engineers. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I would agree with Erin's. Like, oftentimes, if I'm struggling with something and I can't even get an answer from product, it's like, let me ask over on our sales engineering channel on Slack. And
I always have an answer. They always have an answer, and it's always something like they would have thought of, or they're also the first to know some quirky workaround with some bug that you're like, is this me? Like I would often I actually at my last organization I would ask to pair with the sales engineering team, or like they would have their weekly call and I would just sit in on it. And it was the best technical education I've ever had in my entire life. Cause I was like, this is amazing. Like this is my computer science degree is actually you 3 sales engineers that I'm learning from.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on, but yeah, you're right. Like sales engineers are where it's at for a variety of reasons. If you need like the real dope on how the product works.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break because Erin, we have a sponsor now. Like we do actually have to like.
We have a sponsor.
Kevin, you made
let's go.
Yeah, so like Data Protocol has now sponsoring DevRelish. We really appreciate the support from Data Protocol. Those of y'all who don't know what Data Protocol does, it's a great way for you to like create education programs for your communities, essentially. So we really appreciate the sponsorship of Data Protocol, and hopefully you will check them out. All right. Sorry, I had to do that. We haven't had to do that before.
That was like our first one. Welcome, Kevin, to our first ad break.
No, that's fantastic. I even know what that is. Like I had a demo of the Data Protocol and it is pretty sick. Like if you need to do like security compliance training, it's a nice little solution. So check
We
out
did not
Data
pay
Protocol.
Kevin. We did not pay Kevin.
I will also take like $5 to Chipotle. That's on the table.
Well, that's the cost of their yearly sponsorship. So
yeah, great. Thank you for wiping out our entire yearly budget, Kevin.
$5 a year. That's what it costs to sponsor this show. I'm kidding. It doesn't. But anyway. Okay. So we were talking about your flavors of DevRel, and I want to get back to one that kind of struck me that you had advocacy and evangelism separate when often I've seen those, like, I mean, I guess all of these are different sides. Well, sides. A coin only has two sides, but whatever.
It's like a six-sided, like D&D dice.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a traditional dice. Yeah, traditional.
so
throwing
yeah.
dice.
But at the same time, like, usually those are like, okay, the advocacy part seems to me like to come from the evangelism part is like, okay, I'm out there, I'm talking about it, and then I have conversations and I get information and things I can bring back to work with the product team on. So it's like, it's kind of all like this connected flow between advocacy and evangelism to me. But I mean, I don't know if that's but you had them separate, so I'm curious if you have like a different perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the buckets are always necessarily like roles on a team or like humans that do a certain job, so much as like the work to be done, because I do think like evangelism and advocacy tend to feed like one off of the other, because like oftentimes like where you're getting the sort of market insights that you ideally be sharing through like developer advocacy type activities, usually that happens like while you're out in the community meeting developers, like kind of understanding what the state of the art is in a given community, in a given space. It also like is probably how you will meet the customers or like the focus groups or like the types of people that you would like to connect with your product team to get feedback on a particular API, or like how you'll be able to solicit that feedback. It's all kind of connected. Like recently with Deno, we had like a new Q API coming out. So there's like a SQS-ish, or it's like a queue implementation that's attached to like the key value database that's in Deno, and we needed to like find some folks to test it, which I was able to like use our community channels to reach out to folks, find some people who were interested, and then we had a couple folks who hacked together a project. And advocacy, again, like I think like each of these different buckets of activities kind of bleed across one another and sort of work together. Advocate and evangelist, certainly have kind of existed as like ways in which you like job titles in the space. But I think like advocacy and evangelism are probably distinct like activities, I guess I would say.
Yeah, when I started a long time ago, you were generally called like a developer evangelist, and then that term kind of fell out of favor, it seems like, partly because of the religious connotations. I don't know, but yeah, I get the difference. I think you're right that there is a little bit different, but maybe they are tied together. So switching up topics a little bit. So you and I got to talking when we were in the green room getting ready for the show. I was complaining about the way social media, like social media has turned into a mess for it, and it's part of our job in a way, but yet it's kind of become a total mess since. As I was explaining to you, I was like, okay, well, once upon a time, it was like, okay, we need to reach developers. And developers, at least in Europe and in the United States, it's like, just go to Twitter. It's fine. Everybody's on Twitter. And then all of a sudden, it was like, now with Twitter kind of being whatever it is, it's not even Twitter anymore. And it's hard to know where you reach developers. I mean, are you finding that too, like in your work with Deno, or even in your own personal stuff? Is it harder for you to find ways to like reach developers, and where are you finding that they're congregating? Is it still Twitter?
Yeah, I think on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, like that's still like an important channel for Deno certainly, and just has like a lot of momentum. Like a lot of folks that have been in tech for a while have invested in like cultivating the folks that they follow, cultivating their own communities, and it's just hard to move that and like or hard to like walk away from that investment too. Like even if you would prefer not to be using the platform. Maybe you don't understand the game of 5-dimensional chess that Elon is playing with X, and like bringing it to what I'm sure is going to be a very successful financial conclusion. But
in many ways, there's a lot of I appreciate the multiple different ways that could go. In the record books for a reason.
It could you never know. But yeah, I mean, I think it's hard, like we were saying kind of before we got started, more than anything, there's just like I've been, like I said, doing DevRel since about 2008, and there's just so much more content for developers out there now than there used to be back in those days. Like just so many more content creators, so many more like companies who are interested in developers as a customer population. Also, like the content consumption patterns of developers have changed too, right? So like a lot of individual content creators now like have kind of cultivated communities around the content that they create. So the sort of flow of information is maybe less centralized around like, we are going to follow Microsoft and like listen to what Microsoft has to say. But like maybe there's like 3 or 4 like, folks that you follow that whose opinions you trust, that you get a lot of that information from. So I think like a lot of, because of the sort of radically decentralized nature of a lot of like communication online, it is hard to like use one channel and like hit everybody that you want to hit on that one channel. So it's certainly a struggle. So like that's also like one of the reasons why cultivating a community is really important, because that essentially is your megaphone. Like if you have like 500 people in your community that are super engaged, they're always going to like retweet your blog post, or like, that there's this one person who's always going to like put your blog post on Hacker News or whatever. Like that community, those people that are engaged and passionate are going to be the ways that you can like get your tendrils kind of spreading across different channels. So like having those, that core of people ends up being super important for that reason.
Well, yeah. I think that's my spicy take on all of this. And actually, there's a blog post incoming on the Erin blog media channel. It really needs to be made from sounding like a rant to an actual educational blog post right now. So it's in that somewhere in the in-between stage right now. My spicy take is, this is the best thing that's ever happened to this industry. Like, because it forces people to actually give a damn of the audience that they're thinking about, and give a damn about the people they work with and the people who are using their product. And like, I think so many times, like, unfortunately, DevRel has become victim of these social media landscapes. And coming from a very journalistic lens and studying this in grad school a lot, it was like you could write the headline that gets people to read the news. Here's top 10 tips on how to do blah, blah, blah. Or you can write the most impactful story, but those aren't necessarily the same thing. And they have different purposes. And I think as developer relations practitioners, DevRel-ish folk in this industry, or anytime that you're putting content out there, I'd be curious to take of like, it needs to go back to square one of like, what is the goal of the content overall? And like,
I like that take. I mean, I'm curious, like there was times even before Twitter collapsed into whatever it is right now, that I felt like we were all kind of talking to ourselves amongst DevRel on social media. Yeah, I'm like, most of the people replying to my posts are other DevRel folks who, like, this is not really the audience I'm trying to reach. I mean, it's not the with this show it is.
Yeah.
but otherwise, in my day-to-day work, it's like I'm trying to reach actual developers, and I think so to your point, maybe we used Twitter as kind of like a shortcut to like tell ourselves we're reaching however many thousands of developers that follow us, when in fact we were mostly talking amongst ourselves and not really getting to that audience. I don't know.
Yeah. I think like the intent of the content and like kind of having a having a plan before you create content, like where you think, or like what your sort of hypothesis is for like which audience is going to want to consume that content is super important. It's something that I'm still, learning and relearning is like, what is the, what is the objective of a piece of content? Like, is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Like if I create this blog post about, how to use such and such API in Rust, like, am I pretty confident that I'm going to be able to find a constituency that cares about this content? And just kind of firing it out into the ether because of all the noise, like just isn't going to work. Like if you don't have a plan for like specifically, this is the constituency that will benefit from this content, you're probably going to get like 500 page views and not feel very good about yourself.
I think the thing that's, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just going to say 500 page views in a certain context is fine, right? Because it's like, if it's a particular subset of, like it's a piece of content targeted towards existing users who might be a small subset of the audience. This is not like a,
sure, yeah.
For the evangelism part, yes, probably a fail. But like for some of those other flavors of DevRel, depending on what you were trying to do with that content, 500 might be okay. I've done stuff that I'm like, this won't get a big audience, but it is going to help a lot of customers.
Yeah. 30% of them sign up. That's probably a pretty good deal.
Or like documentation pages. Like there's definitely I've written pages of docs that are like deep in the docs weeds where it's like you're using this one specific use case, but if that specific docs page saved 10 support questions, it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, like maybe supports like a particularly valuable flow. Like, so Twilio, former company I worked with, they have like a pretty complex like integration with like SIP trunking, which is like kind of a legacy like phone system thing that I won't get into. And a particular configuration path was not like those pages in the documentation didn't get very much traffic, but like for the people that needed it, like those were big customers, like they were pushing major traffic. So like sometimes the investment there can be pretty meaningful.
One of the questions I have kind of related to this, and it's like, this is also personal Erin's discovery in my journey of DevRel. Very fortunate, I jokingly say I'm a chaos full stack because I've now experienced every part of the development cycle, learning on the job and kind of now, bouncing between a lot of it. But, I spent the last year or so in machine learning, and that's a very Python heavy ecosystem, very different tech stack. People who are in that ecosystem 9 times out of 10, like I remember being in our community doing like writing CSS snippets because a data scientist or a machine learning engineer is very skilled at like the data integrity, but doesn't quite understand this other section. And now as I'm looking for my next adventure, I have 4 different companies on the table that I'm currently in the interview process with, and they're in 4 completely different arenas. And as a DevRel, it's a serious conversation of like, I do have relationships for people of each of these industries, and I'm very fortunate to have that. But from a hiring manager's perspective, at some point, do you hire someone for their community? Or do you hire for their connections? Or is that biased? Or do you expect that they build those new relationships? Because it's always risky when you're investing in someone who has an existing community.
Yeah, that's true. And like, that doesn't mean it's going to work out either. Like you could hire a celebrity within, a given space, and maybe they don't have like sort of the ability to pull a community with them, like towards whatever target you're trying to pull them towards. Like that's certainly something I've seen play out. It can be useful. I think it's probably, I would say like a social media following is probably like a non-indicator of what, or like essentially like if you have a community established in a given space, it may or may not be useful. I think it's kind of hard to know ahead of time. But like that, I mean, it is also a factor. Like if you're working for a program where visibility and like just name recognition is a major problem, and you just haven't made any inroads there. Like having people with established networks is sort of a shortcut to at least like get your brand in front of more people. But like that's it's one very specific thing. It would be you'd be like if you factored too much of your like hiring decision on that, it would probably end up being a mistake. Like no matter how big the community was that would associate with the person.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I think in my experience, like it's been it's useful in terms of like, okay, other people use that same metrics. Like, say, if I really want to be able to get into all the events and be able to just kind of get our name out there, having somebody who's well known, who has a big following in community already, often can help you push that forward, right? But they're translating their followers to your company's followers never really pans out, because they're not really following them for that. So
yeah, it can sometimes be an indicator of like skills that are adjacent. Like if they're a good content creator, that's a very useful skill, and maybe that's how they've garnered the audience they have.
Believe it or not, folks, I don't know that DevRelish has benefited anybody who follows me for comedy.
Yeah, it's true.
The only thing that they might get a benefit out is like practicing bad jokes on them. So sorry, developer audience, for being my warm-up crowd.
Yeah. I doubt my Magic the Gathering related tweets of the past have done much good for the JavaScript community either. Yes.
Yeah. I will say, like, now, okay, so I've made the kind of conscious choice to be off Twitter. And I haven't posted there since November, when the big change happened. And I think from a career standpoint in DevRel, it's probably not the smartest thing. And even from like a promoting CFE standpoint, it's like, I have to make it. It's definitely a sacrifice, because I think I've lost some stuff in there. But I will say, like, it's opened up a lot of different other opportunities, like in the role that I used to spend. I wasn't even aware of how much of my day was spent monitoring the kind of stuff that was going on Twitter, and like, then getting distracted by the latest flame war about, which, whether it's Deno or Cloudflare workers, but like it's really taken a lot of mental energy, huh?
Thought you were going to use TypeScript as the example, but that's okay. Keep going.
Well, I was thinking, I'm always dealing with the edge. So like,
Yeah.
the edge to me is like, that's where I've messed with Deno. I've done less like actual like local app development. It's all like serverless stuff pushed to Deno. Anyway, that was where my example came from. But my point being, like, it's just freed up a lot of mental energy for me and time. Now, I'm not saying like I'm like so much more productive. It's just it definitely allowed me time to focus on some other things, and whether that's better or worse for my role as a DevRel, I'm not really sure. I feel like I'm doing more things that clearly I can say matter for the company, and less for me in terms of like overall visibility. But it may not help if I have to look for another job and they're like, well, we want somebody with a following, and you don't really have one.
That might be a nice filter for you.
I was going to say that's also a good filter. And I say that, so I've had roles in this process. No two technical exams have been the same. I've now done 3 of the 4 companies. Some companies, they sent me the technical exam, and I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. No. So I just I was like, I will opt out here. Like, oh, you want a submitted technical exam and live coding? No, thank you. I didn't want to do both. But it's very interesting, kind of the different roles. And it also tells me a lot about what the company prioritizes in this job search. Like, are they prioritizing, I had a technical exam earlier this week, which it was more about like, let's test some basic stuff, like very, very basic. Can you use our product? And like, if so, click yes. Like, just show us something you built with it. If not, try to use it. Which, like, that's a fair assessment. Like, fair. But then 90% of the other interview, like the exam questions were, how would you get content that you make for this company seen? Or like, where does people in this audience consume technical content? Much better interview question. Meanwhile, like, I have one exam that they changed like the rules halfway through the process, and I'm like, all right, but it also is like, this is an engineering, like, you copy pasted an engineering role description. Like, do you want an engineer? That's fine, but like, it's very different. And so I think even going back to like your 6 roles of DevRel, like, it tells you a lot about what they want. Like, is this more of a support function? Is this more of a, a evangelism function? Is this more of a engineering function, and so on and so forth? But I think that I wish we were just more transparent about it rather than the DevRel-ish.
I think like there's an excellent chance when you interview for a lot of DevRel roles that the person or the like people interviewing you, like they might not know either, like depending on how well established their program is, they might not understand like what is most important for the company at this, at the stage that it's at. So like knowing what the sort of flavors of contribution are will like kind of let you suss out, do they know what they want and need? Number one, like, do they have at least an opening hypothesis? Do they understand the nature of this work and like how it like contributes to what the company is trying to do? And it'll allow you to kind of filter out like, if this is primarily a support job or it's primarily sales engineering. There's actually a lot of like DevRel jobs that like look like DevRel jobs, but then they end up being like a sales engineering role. And that's, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but like just knowing that up front is very useful.
Well, and it's but it's about a fit. Like I truly believe in order for the industry to grow as a whole, and this is like one of the crappy parts of our industry. Can I say crappy parts? Like I don't know. So. I think like it's like like
show.
PG-13 show. I think I've said worse on the show. Don't yell at me. Don't cancel our sponsorship data protocol. We have sponsors now. We have to be mindful of that.
It's true. Can't have the blowback from
blowback of our sponsors. But
for saying like, crappy.
This crappy job we have. But I think it's more crappy in terms of like, are we allowed to say that this like space? This is what is shitty about this space. Wow, I upgraded.
Wow,
language.
There goes our sponsorship. Sorry, y'all. But that being said, is like, is it that? Because like I do believe like again, if you're really tied into the network and the industry, like it's important for you to care. But at some point, like at the end of the day, you gotta log off. Like I know people who go to work, they do a 9 to 5 and they leave, and that's, in my opinion, maybe it's just me, very hard for me to do in DevRel. Like I can't. The gears keep churning and it doesn't go off. And like I meet someone and it's like, oh man, this is a really cool blog post that so-and-so wrote. Is there a collaboration here? Is there a partnership? Is this an integration? Is this, oh, I saw this tweet about how people suck, like, or this product sucks. People that work at this product sucked.
I watched this live stream where somebody was talking about the crappy parts of our job.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's hard to kind of treat this as a 9 to 5 and not have it sort of infiltrate your identity a little bit. Largely because like if you're doing evangelism, you are saying to another developer like, hey, I think you should try this product. I think it'll work under these circumstances and ideally be helpful for you. And you need to like sort of put your own credibility on the line when you ask somebody to try that like on your behalf. So it's hard not to like take that personally and to kind of have it seep into other parts of your life. And also because like DevRel doesn't tend to be bounded by 8 to 5. Like there's community events, there's travel, there's like you will be interfacing with the community in non-standard hours and locations. So it is hard to have that like, I just do this, during the day, 5 days a week type of relationship with the job. Even though that's probably healthier under most circumstances for most jobs.
I have, sorry. I was going to say, I have 2 thoughts on all the stuff we just discussed, but because I had a lot of thoughts, but like 2 I want to share. First of all,
we're going in the not sponsored segment of our show. Just kidding.
As far as the technical tests and stuff like that, I am totally cool with homework. Totally. I think homework is great. Like make me do something with your product, because I want to know that I actually like that this is a product I want to represent, and like I need some time to like spend with it. So kind of giving me an excuse to like sit down and work with product is totally fine. I think like whiteboarding type exams or live coding exams don't make a lot of sense for the role, because it's really just not the nature of what we're ever gonna do. At least I've been in it a long time, never really had the need for that. That was my first one. And the second, kind of related, is getting to know the product. Is I've known folks who are like, oh, I can only really take this role as a DevRel about a product I'm really passionate about. I have to really believe in the product to be able to go out there and be like a representative for the product. And I'm not like disagreeing with that perspective so fully. At the same time, I've been in this long enough. If you stay in a place, like if you have that perspective, at some point or another, you're gonna get like a little disillusioned. Like, oh, maybe you move on to a different product in the same company, or the product takes a different turn that you're like, I'm not 100% on board with that. And it's like, so I feel like, I've always kind of taken the perspective of, I'm not gonna sell you garbage, right? Like I'm not gonna be out there representing something I like absolutely think it's just a bad idea for you to use. But I'm also like, I understand that there's always trade-offs, and like every product has trade-offs, and like I can't be like, okay, I'm like super passionate about this product, or I'm not in at all, because that will change over the course of your time at any company, unless you just kind of every time you get slightly disillusioned, you have I'm off to a different company that I believe in more.
Yeah. I will fully admit I used to be that person, and not this last job, but the job before was definitely like, I will only, and I left companies because I was like, I don't see where this is going. This is not my jam, blah, blah. And this time around, it's more of, is this a product? Would I actually use? Like, that's like, I will say, like, I opted out of roles where I was like, I would never use this product myself. Like, this is just not something I would use, or not something I could advocate for. But kind of on that point, one of the things that I actually do is I look for public tweets or public mentions of people who work at the company being like, how do they handle competitors in the space? And how do they handle when their product doesn't work? Like, what does support do? Do you get the gaslighting? It's not your, if you checked your code, or are you getting a genuine, I'm so sorry, we screwed up, let's own it. And I will say, like, I've worked for a combative company. You could probably dig through my Twitter and find me being super combative for previous roles. Been there, done that, owned it. And I will never do that again. Like, it was so mentally exhausting. Also, LOL, make one company that implodes via notes app on Twitter, and you'll be fine. But not into it anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, something I struggle with a little bit is like, I don't know. I'm weird in that, like, I get frustrated easily by programming. Like, I wouldn't say that like I enjoy programming really. Like I like building stuff. I like creating experiences. The fact that I have to write code to do it is like kind of an annoying side effect to me more. And because of that, like if I encounter something that's like feels a little hard or feels a little broken, like I sometimes will like fire off the odd tweet about like, this was annoying and it slowed me down a little bit. And like those types of things, like those can be interpreted as like you're throwing shade at another product. And it's, and anytime you are like I try to check myself on this, but anytime like you are being negative about another product, whether it's a competitive product or something like that, probably you're wrong and you should just stop. And like, it's just not worth
There's plenty of other things that you can be wrong about that I can dunk on you for. Like, not liking pickles, then I will fight you.
Uh-oh.
Never mind. We're just going to skate right past that particular comment.
Thanks.
Uh-oh, Kevin doesn't like pickles. Kevin,
oh my goodness.
Show if you don't like pickles. Uh-oh.
I'm sorry.
I forgot to show my latest upgrade.
Very nice.
I did find it. I did get it. Yeah, it was been in the back of my Zoom interviews all week. So, but anywho, I'll forgive
Kevin,
me this time around.
You thought that just being head of DevRel qualified you to be on the show. We forgot to ask you the important
question,
which is like, do you like pickles?
Oh, okay. So no.
How other fermented things?
All right. We're kicking Kevin out. Ready?
Yeah. All right. Bye, Kevin. But yeah,
permanently banned. No,
what's up?
Other fermented things.
I mean, not as a rule. I honestly, like, as I'm kind of going down the list of things that I know are fermented, like I'm not a huge fan of most of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I had some kimchi. I don't know. I tried it again after many years of not, and still am not the biggest fan. I feel like I might not have had good kimchi yet. That might be why. But
kimchi can be that way. Beer, kombucha.
Beer is fine. Like I'm not a huge consumer of alcohol generally. But like beer is fine. Like I'll have a beer every now and again.
All right. Okay, we'll keep you on. I guess you're fair. Fair game.
Yes.
You'd something fermented.
Yes, that also works.
Yeah,
So,
sorry. We should have actually made this very clear up front.
that there's a pickle fancier requirement for guests on the show. The equivalent in a past life was like we would ask people if they preferred cake or pie for a dessert. Like, do either of you come down on either the side of cake or pie?
Oh, I'm a pie person. 100%.
Okay. Brian, are you going to take a side here?
I'm not a big sweets person, but
I'm not a big sweets person,
I
but I do like pie.
I'd probably choose cake.
Yes, also a cake person.
Okay.
It's and then it like degenerates from there
later.
Yeah, into like what is a cake, what is a pie? Like is a taco a sandwich type?
Yeah, it's a hot dog
situation.
a sandwich.
Yeah.
Oh god, now we're getting to the real debates. Forget DevRel.
Yeah. Forget. Why are we here talking about DevRel? No, we're real content now.
We can talk about hot dogs.
Yeah.
They go. Relish goes on hot dogs, so it just fits.
It counts.
That's true. Yeah, it does indeed.
So, all right. So on that note, we're nearing time.
Highly useful.
And so you may not be a fan of this, Kevin, because you are not a fan of pickles, but it is a tradition on every episode. We actually have a pickle fact. And Erin has her pickle fact of the day today. She said it. She told me it was going to be epic. So
it is world record breaking pickle fact because it's an actual world record. The most mini gherkins, which are the little tiny pickles, or cornichones is like another alternate world in the fermenting place. I am a fermenter. It's weird. Okay, we'll own it. But the most mini gherkins eaten in 1 minute is 23. Achieved by Leah Shockcover in Redditch, Worcestershire, UK in 2020. She holds multiple Guinness World Records in the field of competitive eating, but I feel like I could honestly eat more than 23 in a minute. I feel like...
Yeah, seriously. They're
like
mini gherkins, right?
Yeah, it's like most mini... Yeah, that's apparently the official world record for the most mini gherkins eaten in 1 minute.
All right. So okay, so we have a new goal for you, which is that I think you can do this. I believe in you, Erin. You can eat.
I'm just gonna call back. Like I can't take a job until I beat this world record. Sorry.
Yeah. You're gonna get. Nick says he's gonna endorse you for fermentation on LinkedIn.
That used to be my favorite thing to do, is to endorse people for ridiculous things on LinkedIn. Can you not? I don't think you can do that anymore, though. Can you?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can. And now that, like, before it was like nobody used LinkedIn except to like. Only time I got in LinkedIn was to like accept other people's eventually accept other people's invites. Now it's like it is one of those places. Getting back to our earlier conversation, where I think developers have started to show up a little bit more than they used to. But.
Yeah, this is true. It's it's a sad state of affairs, but yeah, like I think I have LinkedIn on my phone now, which is not something I thought I'd ever say. Yeah,
it's I'm using the premium because someone else. I mean, the university is paying for me, so I'm like giving LinkedIn money to use a social network. Take that, Elon.
And it's not $8.
Driving developers.
No, and it's not $8. I'm on an academic plan because I'm forever abusing my nyu.edu address. Thanks. But so I think it's like $15 for me, but that's still more than $8.
Yeah.
But I will say it is helpful if you're looking like to get those extra stats. It is actually helpful, and it gives you a little more information that I'm like, you know what? I could actually see how this is being used.
Yes, and you pay so that you can actually contact anybody regardless of whether they want to be contacted.
Or see their emails. I actually don't really care about the contacting because it still flags that you're not connected to them, but it'll let you see their emails. That's the valuable thing for me.
I've always just debated it, never paid for it because I'm cheap.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
All righty, folks.
Yeah,
well, this was a really fun conversation. We learned about the flavors of DevRel. We learned that Kevin doesn't like pickles.
My bad. Sorry. Bad person. No, it's particularly bad for a Minnesotan. Like a pickle on a stick at the state fair is a thing every Minnesotan is supposed to like, and I do not. So I am the weirdo here.
I will forgive you. You like other fermented things, so I will forgive you. It's fine.
Did he like other fermented things? He said he
I think we established beer.
We gave beer. Beer is fermented.
Beer
so.
was like he's like, yeah, I'm okay with
yeah,
beer.
It was yeah.
We'll enjoy
Okay.
that from time to time.
We'll willingly have other fermented things. We'll willingly consume yogurt.
Yes.
Yogurt's fermented.
I love yogurt. There we go.
There we go.
There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah. And
Lactose
yogurt and
fermentation.
pickles are apparently cousins now. Anyway,
This
this
bacteria.
conversation
Don't ruin yogurt for
gone
me,
off the
Brian.
rail.
I was gonna say it's the same strain of bacteria. Actually, fun fact.
That you can only know like from a fermenter, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Write that endorsement about lactobacillus.
Yeah. You really do need to go get that world record on eating gherkins, because this just would like fill your resume there.
Yeah. This is actually my pivot. This show is part of a long-term game plan of pivoting into the fermentation industry.
I support that. Yeah.
Don't know if it's working. We got a non-pickle enthusiast on the show, but
maybe I could be converted. It's possible.
All right, Kevin. Well, we really appreciate you joining us, and thanks everyone in the audience for joining us. Hopefully, this helped you in how you think about DevRel, and we hope you'll join us next month. We will be announcing guests and time and all that stuff soon. Yeah, sorry, Joe showed up 55 minutes late, so.
I'll make him watch the replay at home.
It's all good.
But yeah, thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Thanks,